Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Anderson Plumbing, Heating and Air, proud to support the mission of KPBS and privileged to serve San Diego clients. Anderson Plumbing, Heating and Air, helping homeowners maintain drain, heating, and cooling systems since 1978. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marco Shiley, and by the following. And by viewers like you. Thank you.
Good evening. It's Thursday, September 9th. Thank you for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi. And we begin tonight with new sweeping vaccine requirements affecting as many as 100 million Americans. All federal employees, along with employees of federal contractors, will have to receive a COVID-19 vaccination or, in certain cases, submit to weekly tests. KPBS reporter John Carroll says the president's announcement is already getting pushback.
Good evening, my fellow Americans.
In a Thursday afternoon announcement from the White House, President Biden was unambiguous. All federal employees must be vaccinated within 75 days, and not just governmental employees.
Require all employers with 100 or more employees that together employ over 80 million workers to ensure their workforces are fully vaccinated.
It's expanding the vaccine mandate in an effort to, if you'll pardon the pun, move the needle.
Moving that needle will have the effect of forcing a huge amount of people to get a shot. It covers two huge groups, and there are a lot of people in those groups in San Diego County. All employees of federal agencies like Immigration and Customs Enforcement, ICE, and any federal contractors with 100 or more employees like Northrop Grumman will either have to be vaccinated or submit to weekly testing. Legal analyst Dan Eaton says the administration is moving from using carrots to sticks in the effort to get more people to get the shot.
There's a frustration that we seem to be stuck at a certain level of vaccination.
Eaton says pushback, even from groups typically in support of the president, is inevitable. He's right. We asked for a comment from the American Federation of Government Employees, the AFGE. They wouldn't make anyone available for an interview, but did issue a statement which says, in part, changes like this should be negotiated with our bargaining units where appropriate. We expect to bargain over this change prior to implementation. They'll have 75 days to do that bargaining. Eaton says Biden is on fairly solid legal ground in that he's not mandating everyone in the country be vaccinated, but
the scope of the executive order concerning vaccination mandate is going to be carefully parsed to see if it overreaches.
So, as COVID numbers continue heading in the wrong direction in the U.S., let the legal wrangling begin. John Carroll, KPBS News.
Today's announcement was part of the White House's six-pronged plan. It includes vaccinating the unvaccinated, further protecting the vaccinated through booster shots, keeping schools open, increasing testing and requiring masks, protecting the economic recovery, and improving care for those with COVID. And we have some breaking news to tell you about. Los Angeles Unified School District's Board of Education has voted to require COVID vaccinations for eligible students aged 12 and older. It's the first major school district in the country to issue such a mandate. Isabel Rosales has a closer look at what other districts are doing to lower the spread of infection.
A first for COVID-19 vaccines in schools as the virus impacts more children than ever before. On Thursday, Los Angeles on the verge of becoming the first major school district in the country to require all eligible students to get vaccinated.
Cases are on the rise and children are at risk from the Delta variant in ways we didn't see last semester.
The White House praising the move, saying it supports other districts looking to issue similar vaccination mandates.
Good for them. We know it works in schools. We know that getting your kids vaccinated if they're 12 and older works.
If the LA County Board of Education approves the resolution, students 12 and older would be required to get the shot to participate in in-person learning.
We're trying to do everything we possibly can to keep our schools safe.
With kids making up more than a quarter of all new COVID-19 cases in the U.S., school districts in other major cities are prioritizing efforts to slow the spread. In Detroit, schools are implementing ambitious coronavirus protocols, including weekly tests for all students and faculty, as well as making masks mandatory in the classroom.
72% of our employees are vaccinated, so we haven't gotten there yet with mandating it for employees, and certainly haven't reached that point for students yet.
Meanwhile, in Florida, a judge has allowed school mask mandates to continue despite an appeal by Governor Ron DeSantis. Isabel Rosales, KPBS News.
LA's Board of Education unanimously approved the new vaccine mandate. Students who don't get both shots and who don't have a medical exemption by the spring semester will need to enroll in the school district's independent study program. COVID-19 booster shots could be available to all Americans within the next 2 weeks, but there is still more research being done on who exactly needs them. Dr. Eric Topol is director of the Scripps Research Translational Institute. He says data shows boosters will benefit those over 60 and healthcare workers as well, but we still don't know about younger adults.
What about younger people, younger than age 60? Who are otherwise, healthy, they don't have a compromised immune system. That's where we don't know yet. And we should know that in the weeks ahead.
He says the Pfizer booster shots are ready to go and more data is being collected from Moderna about their effectiveness. Aside from vaccines, he's hoping to see more at-home coronavirus tests rolled out to help stop the spread of the Delta variant. We recently reported about a North County daycare ignoring state masking rules and instead allowing parents and kids to choose whether to wear masks or not. KPBS North County reporter Tanya Thorne tells us after the story aired, the daycare has now changed its policy.
On August 12th, Julie Lowen, the president of Children's Paradise Preschool and Infant Centers, sent out an email on their masking policy. The email, sent to staff and parents, explained that Children's Paradise Centers was choosing to be a, quote, neutral party in the COVID-19 and masking debates. Therefore, she said, the center would be adopting a, quote, parent choice and staff choice approach to masking, but that policy violated the state's child care licensing rules and the rules of one of the organizations they partner with. MAG Head Start gives free curriculum programs to eligible schools, including Children's Paradise. But Arnulfo Manriquez, their CEO, says Children's Paradise never informed them of their mask policy.
We heard about the email after the fact, after your story ran. So when we saw the story, we did immediately communicate with the parents.
Manriquez says MAC provides assistance to families living under the poverty level. He wasn't sure if the parents in his program understood the email sent out by Children's Paradise because many of them don't speak English.
A large percentage of our families in our programs are Latino, and many are English is not the first language, and so we do focus on being able to communicate in a bilingual manner. So we do communicate in multiple languages with our families.
Manriquez also contacted Children's Paradise.
So when we saw that there was what seemed to be something that was out of line with what community care licensing was requiring, we did contact them and inform them that their preschool operations needed to meet all the guidelines that community care licensing operates under.
He says that all daycares and preschools working with any government-funded programs have to follow state licensing rules or lose funding. On September 2nd, Children's Paradise sent families a new mask update. This one read, per the guidance for the use of face coverings outlined by the California Department of Public Health and Child Care Licensing, masks are required for all individuals over the age of 2 while indoors. We contacted Children's Paradise Centers, but they declined to comment. The California Department of Social Services also confirmed there is an active investigation into Children's Paradise Centers, but could not give more information. Tanya Thorne, KPBS News.
And for the latest on the pandemic and resources, you can check out the Tracking COVID-19 section at kpbs.org, and that includes details on vaccines, the latest case numbers, and our local reporting. You can get there by clicking the link that you can find on our homepage. Overdoses, suicide, security issues. These are just some of the problems playing out inside COVID-19 quarantine hotels that are being run by San Diego County. And as Cody Delaney reports, officials have been slow to fix issues with a problem contractor.
For 5 weeks, county supervisors have ignored emails and interview requests about mismanagement at hotels used for people with COVID-19. An iNewsSource investigation found serious gaps in care by poorly trained staff. Those issues were confirmed in a report by San Diego State. And this week, Supervisor Nathan Fletcher broke his silence.
Every day we get up and try to figure out how can we do it better and what changes can we make and what can we do. We're reviewing the report. We're looking for everything that we can possibly change. It's not, there's no lack of will in trying to tackle it. It's a very challenging and very difficult situation.
As of right now, there are no plans to discuss the report or the future of the program in a public meeting. For KPBS, I'm iNewsSource investigative reporter Cody Dulaney.
If you or someone you know is considering suicide, you can call the National Suicide Prevention Hotline at 1-800-273-8255.
I'm Judy Woodruff. Tonight on the NewsHour, as the virus overwhelms hospitals with unvaccinated patients, we talk with Dr. Anthony Fauci. Coming up at 7 after Evening Edition on KPBS.
It will be 20 years on Saturday, 2 decades since America was attacked. A day that, like another one in December of 1941, will live in infamy. In the hours following the 9/11 attacks, while most of us were still trying to get our minds around what had happened, a select few firefighters trained in rescue operations were already heading to New York. KPBS reporter John Carroll brings us the story of 2 of them, young San Diego firefighters who answered the call to help. And a warning to viewers, this story contains graphic content.
The images from that day are seared into our consciousness. The attacks at the Twin Towers, the World Trade Center, a plane slamming directly into the Pentagon, another meant for the U.S. Capitol, forced off course by a group of passengers and going down into a field in Shanksville, Pennsylvania. But for some San Diegans, the memories from that day are more than images. They saw the devastation firsthand once they arrived in Manhattan to help.
I was a member of the Urban Search and Rescue Team, California Task Force 8. I was on the Urban Search and Rescue Team.
John Wood and Matt Nilsson, today an assistant chief and battalion chief. Back then, San Diego firefighters. We interviewed Chief Wood in front of Fire Station 21 in Pacific Beach, where a beautiful memorial stands to those who gave everything on that day. The Twin Towers replicated, along with a piece of steel from the real towers. Chief Wood shared these pictures of what it was like for him and all the rescue workers at Ground Zero. Days after the attack, thick dust and smoke still heavy in the air. Those of us of a certain age or older share a common experience when it comes to 9/11. We all remember where we were, what we were doing when news of the attack came. I was living and working in Los Angeles when a friend called and said, "It's Armageddon." Maybe not Armageddon, but a life-changing experience for the San Diego firefighters who were there the next day to help.
I was at my home in Rancho Penasquitos and having 2 little babies at home, and then my wife and educator, Shelby, was at work. I had laid down because I learned to sleep when the babies sleep, and she called me and said, "Hey, put the news on real quick." So I know everybody does remember those. I mean, I remember it like it was yesterday.
Matt Nilsson was out for a morning jog. Back then, there was no cell phone coverage where he was running.
As soon as I got back into cell coverage, because I was down on the beaches west of the Sunset Cliffs, and I got back and my wife had called and explained to me what was going on. And then I finished my jog and got back home, was watching the news.
Whitson, hold on just a moment. We've got an explosion inside.
But there was very little time to watch the news. Wood says within a half hour of seeing the devastation unfold on TV, he was packing his bags.
We were, packing up and getting ready to go, getting down to our rescue warehouse and getting ready to take 80 members to there, be ready within 4 hours.
Matt Nilsson's specialty back then, as it is today, was communications. He arrived before his fellow San Diegans. He was there just hours later, that first evening of 9/11. The job of setting up equipment needed so people could communicate was urgent.
I was on a forward mission and was on top of the Western Union building the very first night that was looking directly into the pile.
and I was climbing up on scaffolding and installing antennas and establishing communications for a task force.
Nilsen says he was as prepared as he could be for the sight that would greet him in New York. And though Ground Zero was a nightmarish place at that time, he's thankful his career called him to be in that place at that moment.
Everybody wanted to do something, and I was considering myself lucky because I had a mission to do. Or at least I should say, looking back, I consider myself lucky because of something that I could focus on.
Once his job setting up radio communications was complete, Nilsen joined his fellow firefighters down on the pile. There were some truly awful moments.
Recovered a lot of body parts while we were there, and you know, the biggest thing is is the smell, right? So a lot of times we're in horrific low light conditions, but you could smell something, and so we'd bring our dogs in. People lose sight on how important closure is. If you've ever lost somebody, you want to know what happened.
Now, 20 years later, a good place to get a visceral feel for what happened is found here at the San Diego Firefighters Museum. The unspeakable loss still difficult to comprehend after all these years. Replicas of the Twin Towers with the number 343 at the top, the number of New York firefighters lost on that day. Here are their faces. Of course, so many more people died on September 11th, 2001, more than 3,000. And the message from back then is the one hometown heroes like John Wood and Matt Nilsen still remind us of today. Never forget. John Carroll, KPBS News.
9/11 is also being remembered by the Muslim community, which became a target of hate immediately after the attacks. Marwa Abdullah was a college student during the 9/11 attacks. She has since gone on to make a career of building understanding between non-Muslims and the Muslim American community.
50% of U.S. Muslims are native born. So Islam, is often framed as foreign and other, but Islam is an intricate part, and Muslims have played an intricate role in the building of this country. They are not just, good and bad from the security lens that we often frame them through.
Abdullah says one of the challenges for Muslim Americans is how they are portrayed in the media. She has partnered with the Institute for Social Policy and Understanding to create a guide for media professionals on how to cover American Muslims. We will continue our coverage marking 20 years since September 11th. Tomorrow on Evening Edition, a look at how might our response to those attacks inform this moment in history. As the heat wave continues, we're being asked to save power once again. State power grid officials issued another flex alert, and that started at 4 o'clock this afternoon, lasts until 9 tonight. So when could we get a break from these hot temperatures? Melissa Constanzer has your forecast.
We're keeping things hot and largely dry. Really not talking about any moisture or rain chances in the next couple of days, but we'll watch towards the coast. Maybe a little bit can kind of squeeze in from the south, but overall a pretty quiet time as we keep the heat advisories in place here. So still pretty uncomfortable as we move through the next couple of days here. Well, temperatures falling into the 70s overnight. San Diego 72 for your low. Notice here basically a bit of a marine layer trying to squeeze out a shower or thunderstorm. It's very, very unlikely to see much in the way of moisture here. So we'll call it limited with some drizzle possible in a few locations. But as we transition into your Friday, basically high pressure continues to keep things hot and dry. So that's going to be the story throughout the Southwest. There hasn't been much in the way of mountain thunderstorms, although maybe because of our proximity to some of the tropical moisture trying to surge in from the south, maybe we squeeze out a shower or mountain thunderstorm in a few spots in our southern locations, but that would be it. And I think that's fairly unlikely here, but we'll leave that chance in the forecast. 82 for the high tomorrow in San Diego, 82 in Oceanside. As you look towards Borrego Springs, we're still talking 105. As we move through time here, the next couple of days, holding on to the 80s and staying pretty quiet as we keep sunshine giving way throughout the afternoon, clouds in the morning to kick things off for our coastal locations. Inland communities, we are actually going to be holding on to the mid-90s getting into Saturday, so still a pretty warm time here right through the weekend as we make it to the 90s. Then hopefully Monday and Tuesday we can ease off on the temperatures. Basically the high pressure is going to break down overhead and weaken a little bit, so that will hopefully refresh our temperatures. Mountain locations making it to the 70s. Could be that shower or thunderstorm around the spots. Very limited though on our chance for rain, and that's going to be true in the deserts where we get a few extra clouds here heading through Saturday, but then the rest of the weekend looking hot and dry. For KPBS News, I'm AccuWeather meteorologist Melissa Constanzer.
County leaders have announced plans to offer help to struggling small businesses. Supervisors Nathan Fletcher and Nora Vargas want to create a designated office to connect business owners with resources that they need. The office would also work to offer resources equitably. Austin Evans, who owns his own law firm, says he's seen the pandemic's impact firsthand.
It's really been a challenge trying to figure out, where our next business is going to be coming from, where our next clients are going to be coming from, especially when a lot of them shutter up and close their operations down. And then you have to kind of figure out where you're going from there.
And the situation is especially dire along the border. In San Ysidro, nearly 200 businesses have been forced to close. A plan by 2 county supervisors might pave the way for people to start selling food from their home kitchens. KPBS reporter Alexandra Rangel has more on the business concept they're hoping to bring to San Diego.
At the end of the day, we're taking people that would normally have to operate in the gray, and we're giving them a path to operate legally and lift their community.
County Supervisors Joel Anderson and Nora Vargas are hoping to make it possible for Micos to operate in San Diego County. Micos, also known as Micro Enterprise Home Kitchen Operation, allows people to sell food straight from their kitchen. The homemade food business concept was made possible in the state through the passing of AB 626 and AB 377 in 2018. Permits and licensing to operate are granted on a county-by-county basis.
Different counties have done different things. Riverside, San Bernardino, they're slightly different, but they've had tremendous success with it.
Anderson says Micos would be regulated through local food agencies. Health permits and a business license would also be required.
There are severe caps on this. They can only do 60 meals a week, so we're not talking about competing with your local restaurant.
He says Micos is a stepping stone for those looking to maybe one day open a restaurant.
It means so much to me. It means to be able to cook and share my family recipes, serve safe food.
Diana Tapiz is the owner and chef of Tres Fuegos Cocina. Tapiz and her husband started selling birria at pop-up events during the pandemic. As demand for their food grew, they decided to rent a commercial kitchen. But the dream quickly came to an end.
It's a journey that we were ready to give up on. Not give up, but just it's hard. It's hard to get those startup costs.
Tapiz says getting a Micos business license means being able to continue her family's legacy.
My mother's dream was to work in the food industry and open her own small food business.
Anderson and Vargas will be introducing Micos to the Board of Supervisors at its next meeting. Alexandra Rangel, KPBS News.
Our KPBS Summer Music Series continues tonight with another featured artist. Sondido de la Frontera is a group that embodies the spirit of our diverse border region. They offer their own take on cumbia, Latin America's resurging dance music. Let's take a listen.
Métele rock, métele rock, métele guaguancó, métele chu, métele gua, métele chango, métele amor, métele paz, métele revolución, métele sabor, 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 métele roots, métele rock, métele guaguancó, métele chu, métele gua, métele chango, métele amor, métele paz, métele revolución, métele sabor, 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 sabor.
My name's Carlos Paez of the B-Side Players, Sonido La Frontera, and we got Luke Henshaw, Burst Power, Planet B, and DJ Unite, Tribe of Kings, First Power Crew.
Our cumbia, as Carlos says in one of our first singles, is cumbia diferente. We use a lot of the music that influences us, especially where we've grown up in our city of San Diego. And a lot of those mesh together to create a cumbia vibe, you know, with all sorts of extra seasonings on top of it. The cumbia vibe is something that we're drawn to because of the infectious rhythms, the danceability of it, and the way that it just makes people feel good, because that's what we want our music to do. We want you to feel good when you hear our rhythms and the music and the lyrics, and we want you to have a positive feeling from it. We were playing in places like Logan Heights before it had its full renaissance, and we were setting up at places like Bolsalta, backyard party style things out there before there was a total resurgence in Logan Heights. We've been able to play at a lot of different types of shows. Some shows, you know, at places where they wouldn't expect our vibe, and, you know, sometimes we're introducing cumbia music to people for the first time.
You can find our full interview with Sonido de la Frontera along with the rest of tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org. Thanks so much for joining us tonight. I'm Maya Trabulsi. Have a great evening.
Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Anderson Plumbing, Heating and Air, proud to support the mission of KPBS and privileged to serve San Diego clients. Anderson Plumbing, Heating and Air, helping homeowners maintain drain, heating, and cooling systems since 1978. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marco Shiley, and by the following. And by viewers like you. Thank you.